Good morning. Welcome to the School of Christian Mysticism early morning Lent meditation. This season of Lent we are offering on Wednesday mornings meditation on the theme, who lives, who dies? And this morning's meditation will reflect on what kind of life is worth living, and what must I release to receive it. For this meditation, I'm going to draw on the life and witness of contemplative Cistercian monk Thomas Keating. Letting go so that the true self can live. Thomas Keating's centering prayer, a spiritual journey that demanded or dismantled the false self. Perhaps he would say that the life worth living is the life of the true self, the self that is rooted in God, and that what must be released is everything that props up the false self system. In one of his books, The Human Condition, Contemplation and Transformation, Keating wrote, "The false self is deeply entrenched. You can change your name and address, religion, country, and clothes. But as long as you don't ask it, the false self, to change, the true self simply adjusts, the false self simply adjusts to the new environment. For example, instead of drinking your friends under the table as a significant sign of self-worth and esteem, if you enter a monastery, as I did, fasting the other monks under the table could become your new path to glory." How does the system of the false self rise? Keating told this story. A young child overhears his father saying, "I wish he was more like his brother," which attacks his core psychological need for esteem, for affection. The incident then becomes buried in the boy's subconscious. He may not even remember the incident in adulthood, but on a subconscious level, part of him continues to want to imitate his brother, to achieve his father's affection. The emotional program for happiness, of needing to be like my brother, becomes a deep part of who he is. As a result, he develops attachments to things that make him more like his brother, and aversions to things that make him different. These attachments and aversions, at least in part, continue to drive his behavior throughout life. So I'm going to offer a meditation that you might like to allow to expose some of these programs for happiness which we all carry, we all develop for one reason or another. And we begin simply with honesty and noticing the false self. So let's settle into silence. Just notice the breath as we sit, naturally breathing in and breathing out. No need to take control of this, just simply observe it. You might begin to notice the natural deepening and slowing of the breath. As I breathe in, I know I'm breathing in. As I breathe out, I know I'm breathing it out. Here I am. And let the body soften. Maybe just notice how your body is this morning. Can you relax your shoulders a little? Feel your feet firmly on the ground, rooted on the earth. Neck straight, back straight. And you might like to gently ask, what in me is trying to survive at all costs? Thomas Keating often described the false self as a cluster of emotional programs for happiness. Security, affection, control, that we cling to because we fear emptiness. The process of Lent exposes these programs, not to shame us, but to free us. So let these, each one, surface without judgment. It might be the need to be seen, the need to be safe, the need to be right, the need to be in control, the need to be admired, or something else. Notice how much energy these consume. Notice how fragile they are. All these are part of our self that die. So we begin with this question. What in me is trying to survive at all costs? And then let's consent to God's presence. This is Keating's core insight. Transformation begins with consent, not effort, not striving, not self-improvement or self-help. Just a quiet, interior yes. I consent to your presence and action within me. Let's internalize that. I consent to your presence and action within me. There is no need to conceptualize God. I simply know that God is present. I consent to your presence and action within me. This is the hinge of the whole meditation. It is the moment where the false self loosens its grip. I consent to your presence and action within me. In this consent, we allow the dismantling by God in us. Keating taught that God's love is not sentimental, it is purifying. It gently dissolves whatever is not real. And so we might ask, what must fall away for me to live freely? What must fall away for me to live freely? And let the answers rise without forcing them. A resentment, a fear, a story you've told about yourself, a role you've been performing, a wound you've been protecting, a habit of self-judgment, a way of controlling outcomes. Again, no judgment, just let whatever it is rise and be seen. Nothing to push away here, just the consent, allowing God to do the work. Process of dying to self so that we may live. It's not necessary for us to focus on whatever is arising now, but rather trust God. Thomas Keating taught centering prayer and practiced it every day. In centering prayer, it is necessary simply to be still, to let the thoughts be there, but not attached to them. And so Keating's instruction is to find a word or a phrase, sacred word, sacred phrase, that rises in you, and just keep repeating that in your mind as you notice yourself becoming attached to a thought. For example, you might choose something like Yeshua, Yeshua, Yeshua. Don't have to repeat it incessantly, just each time that you notice attachment to a thought. No thought is an enemy, it's just a thought. It only has energy if we attach ourselves to it. And so we just let go. You can begin to notice perhaps the spaciousness that is opening now. As the false self quiets, even for a moment, something else becomes perceptible. A stillness, a clarity, a gentleness, a sense of being held. Keating would say that this is the true self, the self that already is participating in God's life. We might ask ourselves, what does it feel like to simply be? Unforced, unafraid, unmasked, rooted in love, free from compulsion, open to the reality that simply is. No demands here. We have everything that we could possibly need in this moment. And we can respond to anything outside of us from this stillness. Let's stay here for 7 minutes. in stillness. Perhaps you'd like to introduce a word or a phrase as you notice thoughts rising. Let them go. And gently, you might like to notice your hands or your feet as we return to the consciousness of being in the body. And we might like to give thanks to God. Thank you for the life you are growing in me, not a life I manufacture, not a life I earn, but a life I receive. Lent is not about becoming somebody else. It's about releasing what is not you, so that what is you, the God-given self, can emerge. So the question becomes, what if the life worth living is already within me, simply waiting for space? Amen. Peace be with you.